In Wisconsin, more than half of African American children live in poverty, about twice the number of white kids. Again, one of the biggest gaps in the nation. And the effects of that toxic stress carry over into the classroom.
We're missing these children, and then when we miss them, then all of a sudden they get bored in class, and then they become a disruption, and then all of a sudden they start getting suspended and expelled, and it goes on and on. It's like a snowball effect. Take the ball from me. There you go, JoJo. There you go. Good job, good job, good job.
Of all the extreme racial disparities in Wisconsin, perhaps none is more alarming, disturbing, or destructive as those involving African American children. Education is often the only way people living in poverty can pull themselves out. But like the health disparities at birth and the poverty disparities at home, African American children in Wisconsin face the nation's worst racial disparities at school.
Focus on getting this done.
Studies show many black students begin their educational careers behind and never catch up. Experts say the pressures of poverty can cause changes in the brain that can lead to issues with behavior and low performance in school. And according to the Census Bureau, almost 60% of Dane County's African American children live in poverty.
Poverty does matter. It does matter if a kid slept in a car the night before in terms of their willingness and ability really to come to school and be focused on learning.
The latest numbers follow a decades-long pattern. Wisconsin's graduation and test scores are among the best in the nation for white students, and the gap between their educational achievements and those of African American students is the worst in the nation.
If you have children in the same setting and their performances are so different, that means someplace, somewhere, the system has got to step up.
In 1994, the Wisconsin Public Interest Research Group released a report describing a dual education in Madison schools. It's one of the first studies to conclude that there were deliberate, systematic ways in which race was a factor in the unbalanced success rates between black and white students. The report stated two main factors: high suspension rates for black students and a dramatic lack of African American teachers. The black student-teacher ratio that year was 75-1, 11-1 for whites. In 2015, the black ratio was still 64-1, and 2 decades later, Madison schools still had the biggest racial achievement gap in the nation.
That looks good. Here, start rewriting it in here.
Okay.
Camara Stovall is one of the few African-American men teaching today in the Madison School District. In fact, it's rare to see a black teacher in most Madison schools. In the 2013-14 school year, black students made up 22% of MMSD enrollment, but only 2.2% of teachers were black.
Children have to see themselves. You know, when they come to school every day, if they see somebody that resembles their parents or whatnot, people that actually value their education, then they'll have more value in their education.
Time is critical when it comes to teaching. Studies show that students who aren't reading at their age level by the 3rd grade are far less likely to graduate, and 2/3 of those who aren't up to speed by the 4th grade will end up in prison or on welfare.
They see us and they see, well, maybe you don't have to end up in jail. Or maybe you don't have to, you know, stay at home. You know, may I see you every morning. I see you come to school with a smile on your face. You know, you don't have to always walk around angry or mad. You know, there are outlets, you know, but if you don't see it, if you're not exposed to it, then there's no way of you to really know of what direction to go.
I grew up in this community. I've only had 2 black teachers in my life, 3 if I, one art teacher, 3 in my entire life.
Alex G. is a Madison West High and University of Wisconsin graduate and community leader who says the lack of black teachers can be traced back to the nation's school integration in the 1960s, when black students first began attending previously white-only schools.
When we were integrated into white schools, our black teachers, our heroes, were not allowed to come with us. And we have not recovered from that. And to this day, we are still begging for black teachers.
But here's where the long-standing racial disparities in test scores, graduation, and college enrollment have become a vicious circle.
It's going to be very, very difficult to increase the pool of black teachers if you don't increase the pool of students who graduate from high school and graduate from college.
Former Milwaukee school superintendent and state employment relations secretary Howard Fuller says in the meantime it's up to the current teaching corps, overwhelmingly white in Wisconsin, to make a difference. But to do that, experts say many will have to change their attitudes that have been ingrained over the years, like the stereotype of black students who can't or won't learn.
you have to make clear to them that I understand some of what you're dealing with. I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that you learn. And I believe that you have the ability to learn. And I'm going to try to figure out different ways that I can teach you using the assets that you bring to the table.
Racism in the education system isn't just about who is teaching, but also what they're teaching, that African American leaders say needs to change if we hope to see better racial and cultural understandings in future generations.
I learned in school that people who looked like me had chains around their necks. In second grade, my mother said, "Alex, I remember when you came home. You said, 'Mom, were we slaves?' And the only thing that the white kids learned was they set us free."
So you're starting our kids' education, black and white and everybody else, with the perception that blacks were enslaved and less than, and then there's no mention of any great contributions of what blacks have done in America.
But there is also agreement that the schools are only part of the problem.
Schools alone cannot address something this complex, right? You know, there's a reason that homework is provided. I mean, there's an expectation that the learning extends into the home and to the community, and that parents and family plays a role.
Wisconsin's racial education gaps in achievement and graduation are also a byproduct of how schools discipline their students. A 2015 UCLA study found our state's high schools had the highest black student suspension rate in the country, and elementary schools the second highest. That means the students who are struggling the most in the classroom are being kept out of the classroom the most. And things have gotten worse over time. The 1994 WPRI study showed 50% of black students in Madison schools had been suspended. 20 years later, it was 64%, even though African Americans made up just 18% of the student body.